Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss how there seems to be a really weird narrative emerging regarding Brexit. Poll shows people want the Labour government to take us back into the single market. Why is Starmer ruling it out? He's not. And if you look at what Labour have been proposing for some time and what they've actually been doing and saying this week, back to the single market is the direction of travel. So let's say I'll do a little experiment. Let's say there was a whole load of you in a big room here. And I was to ask for hands up to all those who saw the headline in The Guardian saying Starmer ruled out going back to the single market in his lifetime. Going to guess a lot of hands. Now, keep the hands up if you read what Starmer actually said, not what the headline said. Now, keep the hands up if you heard what Starmer actually said on this very subject in Belfast this week. Oh, but The Guardian said Keir Starmer said we'd never joined the single market in his lifetime. Yeah, good one. The Guardian may have said it, indeed did, but not only did Starmer not, when you read the quote rather than the clickbait headline, if you watch what Labour are actually doing, you can't mistake it for anything other than what the Daily Telegraph are huddled up in fear with the Daily Mail about. Back to the EU via the back door. Not quite as dramatic as that because there is no back door. But there are multiple things which Labour need to do in order to get us back into the single market, if that's the focus. Obviously, I want much more than that. It's worth spending some time listening to experts as well at this point. And I mean EU trade experts. Little hint for you. You don't really see the mainstream media paying any attention to these guys. It's not entertaining for them. If you get all your Brexit news from the mainstream media, you don't even know who they are. They're not household names to you. You won't find out what they have to say by reading the newspapers. In fact, another little challenge for you. Try to find a Brexit article in the mainstream media which interviews a trade expert. I think you might struggle. Our media comments on Brexit, but almost never reports on it. The Financial Times is a rare example, but their stuff is behind an expensive paywall. And I'm going to do a video on exactly this at some point, but there's been so much happening rapid fire now that a few topics I had planned are getting pushed back, but there's no rush. The election's over, the new government are in place. Things aren't going to happen overnight, so it can wait. But what really needs remarking on now is that what Keir Starmer was talking about in Northern Ireland earlier this week, in conjunction with what Labour have had as their position for at least 2 years, is an advanced form of access to the single market. Now, whether we get it is another matter, because the EU have to agree. But from our point of view, we have a government which wants to lower trade barriers. And what are those trade barriers to? The single market. Essentially, what Labour would like to negotiate is a sector-by-sector level access. Cherry picking, I hear you cry. No, cherry picking is said, we want this, we want that. These are all best for us. Oh, what's that? You want something in return? Yeah, we're not interested in what you want. That's cherry picking. That's what Boris Johnson and his goons tried to do. Didn't work. Labour are not about that. They're just saying, well, this is what's important to us. They want the cherries. This is what's important to us. Whilst at the same time understanding that the EU have things that are important to them as well, which they're going to talk about. Agreements always begin with each side presenting what it's want. You never have an agreement where someone comes in and says, right, we want all this and we know you want all this, so let's sort it out, shall we? It's like, we want all this, what do you want? And you end up between the two positions with something that works in everyone's net favour. And here's the thing. Labour can't join the single market. It doesn't matter how much people insist we need to do it for our economy. There's no such thing as joining the single market in our position. To even try would require over a decade of negotiations, which could fail at any time due to political wrangling. And not just with the EU, EFTA members would also have to be in on that decision. What we need are boring technical discussions about better access to one another's markets. What the EU wants is better access for fishing and youth mobility. What we want are sector deals for chemicals, plant and animal products, a couple of other things. And do you know what will come if we can negotiate sector-specific deals? Well, first of all, dynamic alignment of standards for everything connected to those sectors. Obviously, we cannot reduce trade barriers without aligning those standards. Now, we know this is a very hot potato and the right-wing media will do their nut if we suddenly start dynamically aligning with the EU. I mean, we sort of have in some areas anyway. But the fact that Labour are openly saying this is what they want to do means that despite people decrying Starmer as a born-again Brexiteer, he knows what needs to happen and he's doing it. If you want to join the single market, you need to align standards. Labour are openly saying, and they said it this week they want to align standards. But by doing it on a sector by sector basis, if that can be agreed, they don't want to say, oh yeah, just going to blanket adopt all these EU rules because we're not in the place to be able to do that yet. The government will just say, look, we're aligning these standards because it's an area of common interest, but we're not aligning in those other ones. So it's not blanket alignment. And this is where Northern Ireland becomes important. This is why Stan was talking about this in Belfast, because the current arrangements are causing political turmoil. May have noticed. Agreements like this would dial down those visible signs of Brexit divergence between Northern Ireland and Britain, as well as benefiting businesses in Britain and moving us closer to the EU. It's all part of a holistic approach. You know, Keir Starmer, along with people like David Lammy, were amongst the most obviously committed anti-Brexiteers opposed to the most self-destructive policy any British government ever implemented. They did not get kicked in the head by a horse in 2020 when we left. They just understood that we'd left and getting back's quite tricky. And in order to do that, we have to navigate two massive problems. First problem is that Brexit is still highly toxic for the general public. You know, we can't have another Brexit debate as it is at the moment. You know, they don't want to hear about it. Solution, small boring steps that the Telegraph will go mad about, but nobody will understand. They've agreed a deal on chemicals, the outrage. That's a good thing, isn't it? It means we can get chemicals to treat our sewage more easily. Yes, but it's a deal with the EU. Okay, like the ones Sunak did with the Windsor Framework? Yes. Okay, we were cool with that. Why wouldn't we be cool with this? It's a step towards the single market. Okay, does it mean joining the single market? No, but we might. So this deal isn't joining the single market then? No, but it's a step towards it. The only people who will care are the ones who want that step towards it. Everyone else will just see a boring deal that means we don't have so much shit in our rivers. Obviously, the government needs to get its messaging right because the head cases will absolutely be raging. But just boring deals, that's how we beat this. Labour's red lines, remember, in this particular case, is just not join the single market. Well, we can't. There are no red lines about gaining Northern Ireland level access. In fact, Labour have actually been clear they would like that arrangement. And then if we can agree one deal for one sector, we can work on a deal for another sector. Another boring deal with boring details, with some benefit that you sell to the public, which is also not single market, just enhanced access. Remember, even Boris Johnson said we would have access to the single market, you know, but that's what we want, access like Northern Ireland has. And with each of these steps, we dial down the political tensions in Northern Ireland. So there's a bit of a benefit there for the EU. And we get close to the single market red line. And once you get close enough, we've already done so much of the work, it's only a little step to be over it. Second problem is we simply can't just join the single market. Like, we need to rebuild trust. That is huge, can't be overstated. Consider the previous government tried to renege, indeed did renege, on legally binding agreements. It even stood up in its own parliament and said they were going to break the law in a limited and specific way. In Belfast, Starmer said, the EU are not interested in new arrangements until we have complied with the existing ones. He cannot simply go to them. I mean, obviously, he's already been talking, but he cannot simply go to them and say, can we have these new arrangements? Because they are saying, you haven't complied with the existing ones yet. You know, we haven't actually implemented our end of the Brexit bargain over 3 years later. We have a massive trust mission here. You know, we might see that we have a serious government now. We might say, look, but the Labour are different. But we're still the same country that behaved in the same way. Our new government has to prove itself. A lot of agreements have a healthy dose of trust acting as like the mortar between the bricks. Other countries are going to be more wary about giving us that level of trust right now. And even in the UK, we need to get political agreement before we can even think about the current red lines, which are a long way off. You know, that means getting the Conservatives on board. The only ways to join the single market, you've got three ways. Join the EU, join EFTA, or get a bespoke deal. The bespoke deal does not exist anywhere in the world, so it would have to begin from scratch and need the support of all of the EU and EFTA members. It's the hardest of all ways to get into the single market. So when people just say, oh, just join the single market, they're literally asking something to do that has never been done and is way harder than any other form of getting into the single market, which also means it would take longer. It's almost like some anti-Brexit minds believed Boris Johnson about being able to get immediate deals. He was lying, or ignorant, or both. Deals take time. And all of these full single market routes would take a decade at least and are not guaranteed to succeed. In fact, without political support in the UK, they're destined to fail. The EU would not even open discussions while the Conservatives are saying that they're going to win the next election and cancel it all. But sector by sector agreements, if possible, and yes, that'll mean horse trading with the EU, like literally all agreements that the EU makes all the time with countries around the world. This approach means we get to improve our access over a period of time, hopefully starting this Parliament. Absolutely blows my mind that people are seriously arguing that we should spend 10 to 15 years negotiating this big thing and getting all the access right at the end, nothing at all until it's all been agreed, and it might never be agreed, when Labour is saying we just want to take smaller steps towards the big thing where we unlock the shiny things as we go. You know, we can have some of that access sooner if we get this right. I mean, I mentioned the Windsor framework earlier. Let me take you back. When Rishi Sunak was talking about it in Northern Ireland, he said it was this amazing deal. That Northern Ireland had this best of both worlds opportunity. And we all watched on from Britain and asked, well, why can't we have that then? Well, it's over a year later. And not only is it us asking our government that question, we now have a government that's wanting to ask the EU that question. And although Starmer is conscious of the need to pour cold water on talk of freedom of movement and full dynamic alignment, he's also said that alignment is in our interests, and the alignment that's in our interests is something that he wants to pursue. And of course, every single sector we can get a bilateral agreement for is in our interest. You know, I've said on more than one occasion, you've got Brexiteers complaining that Labour are taking us back into the EU, and you've got rejoiners complaining that they aren't. Can't both be right. But what Labour are wanting from the EU is in actual fact a step-by-step process of joining the single market. Never mind what the Guardian or the Independent are saying that Starmer's saying. Look at what he's actually saying and look at what his government is doing. Doesn't mean we definitely join the single market, of course. The process for doing so is still insanely difficult, and if the Conservatives insist on remaining pro-Brexit, actually impossible. But if we get agreements on a sector-by-sector basis with dynamic alignment in return for better market access, then we're getting our toes into the single market. And then if the political will suddenly materialises for the bigger leap, we'll already be well on the way to doing so. And if it doesn't, if this political will never materialise, we still have better market access than if we tried to ask for the full agreement that gets us absolutely nothing until it's all fully implemented, that the EU won't waste its time with anyway until we as a country are committed. Genuinely baffles me that you've got some people complaining about this specific aspect of reversing Brexit. Of all the problems with Brexit, trade barriers are the one that Labour are actually trying to reverse with all speed and are very open about. There are some areas where Labour are a bit more entrenched. In terms of what they say, I can't read their minds. EU market access is not one of them. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.